Are you buying a home with tenants in it during COVID? And are you assuming the tenants will move out by the close date? This is a cautionary tale, but here's what you need to know to make sure you can move into the property you just bought. Hi, I'm Francine Viola, Realtor in Olympia, Washington, and as of today, November 18th, 2020, the state of Washington has a proclamation that prohibits landlords from serving notice requiring a tenant to vacate a property. Here's what it is and how it can affect buyers. On February 29th, 2020, Governor Inslee proclaimed a state of emergency, and this included a proclamation where landlords were prohibited from delivering any notice requiring a tenant to vacate the property. There are exceptions to this proclamation, one of which is if the landlord plans to sell the home. In that case, the landlord is to give a 60-day notice to vacate to the tenant. This moratorium on evictions is meant to protect tenants from homelessness if they could not pay their rent due to a job loss or financial hardship from the impacts of the pandemic, but it also includes any notice to vacate. When I represent buyers who are interested in a property that is occupied by tenants, here are some of the questions I ask the listing agent. What is the lease agreement with the tenant? Are they month to month, or do they have several more months left on their lease? If the tenant is month to month, that is ideal for a buyer who intends to occupy the property themselves. Usually that's the case, but sometimes the landlord will sell with the intention that the buyer is also an investor and will not be occupying the property. If the tenant has 8 months left on their lease, for example, the tenant has the right to remain in the property for the term of their lease even after the property sells. When will the tenants move out? Have they been given the 60-day notice to vacate? If the seller has delivered the notice to vacate, when was that done? Will the 60 days be up before the close date? But the bad news is here, serving this notice isn't enough. This doesn't mean the tenant must move out in 60 days. It just means the owner can start the eviction process on day 61 if the tenant has not moved out. What are the tenant's intentions? Are they trying to move out, or are they planning on staying? Although the answers to these questions are not going to help buyers from a legal standpoint, it's still a good idea to get the overall picture of the situation. Sometimes buyers will pass on a property if we find out the tenant is uncooperative, because the next question for my buyers is, what happens if the tenants do not move out? If the tenants have not vacated the property by your closing date and you are now the new owner, you have two options. Either become their landlord and keep them as a tenant, or as the new owner / landlord, you can deliver the 60-day notice to vacate. All of this costs time, money, legal fees, and certainly a lot of unwanted stress. Before it gets to this point though, buyers should do everything they can to make sure the property is vacant when they close. One way to do this is to make your offer contingent upon the tenant moving out prior to closing. This is not a surefire solution, and the seller may not even accept your offer with this contingency. But your goal during the pandemic with this eviction moratorium is to make sure the property is vacated by closing. Fortunately, this worst case scenario doesn't happen often. But keep in mind, we are in a market where not only are there very few homes for sale, but rental properties are also scarce. Tenants may not have a place to move to, and the next place they move to probably will have a higher rent. The best defense you as buyers can do is to understand the risks for buying any property. Real estate transactions are getting more and more complicated, and then add COVID and all the rules that go along with that, and it's becoming a hot mess. But an experienced and educated realtor like myself can detangle and cool down some of these hot messes. If you are planning to make a move to the Olympia area, call me today. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And in the meantime, happy holidays.